My name is Audrey Pickens, and I'm 29 years old. If you met me, you probably wouldn't call me dramatic. I don't scream during the arguments. I don't throw plates or storm out of rooms. I've always believed composure was its own kind of strength. My dad used to tell me, "Don't raise your voice, Audrey. Raise your standards." Those words stuck with me long after he passed. They became part of me, a quiet mantra pulsing underneath every choice I made. For a while, Ethan said he loved that about me. He'd tell people, "Audrey's steady, she makes me feel grounded." He once traced his fingers down my arm and whispered, "You make me feel safe." I believed him. I believed in us. We had been together for 2 years. I met him at a mutual friend's game night, one of those evenings where laughter feels too loud in a cramped apartment and the smell of pizza clings to your clothes. Ethan was magnetic. He leaned back in his chair, tossing out sarcastic one-liners that made everyone double over. He thrived in the spotlight. And then there was me, the quiet one on the couch, sipping wine, watching the chaos with a soft smile. I didn't chase attention, I observed, but somehow Ethan noticed me in the stillness. He made his way across the room and asked what I was thinking. No one had asked me that all night. At first it was intoxicating. He liked that I cooked for him after long shifts, that I remembered how he took his coffee, that I didn't play games. He told me I was different, stable, supportive, easy to be around. He liked that I didn't try to compete with his stories or fight for attention. For months I thought I had found a balance. We both needed his fire and my calm. But the longer we were together, the more the compliment shifted into something else. "You're so responsible" turned into "God, Audrey. You're such a rule follower. Thanks for planning." That weekend trip became, "You never do anything spontaneous." Little barbs, coated in laughter, always brushed off as teasing. I tried not to let them sting. I told myself he was stressed or tired, or just didn't realize how sharp his words could be. But then came the comparisons. Not constant at first, just little throwaway comments. One night I brought home dinner from a new restaurant. He smiled, kissed my cheek, then Zhao casually added, "Jessica." Used to surprise me with stuff like this all the time. Jessica, his ex. The first time her name slipped into conversation, Ethan was sprawled on the couch with a beer in hand. He said Jessica had been too controlling. He shook his head and added, "Sometimes I miss how passionate she was, though. I let it go. Everyone has an ex who lingers in memory, blurred by nostalgia. Nostalgia lies. It makes people forget the bruises and remember the kisses." But Jessica's name kept surfacing. Not in tender ways, not in confessions of longing, but always as some kind of twisted benchmark. Jessica would have done it differently. Jessica never second-guessed herself. Jessica was exciting. The irony was impossible to ignore. Ethan had once cried telling me how Jessica tracked his phone, showed up at his job uninvited, and maxed out his credit card before disappearing for 3 days. He had called her toxic. He had said I was his peace after the storm. And yet here he was, romanticizing her chaos. I tried harder. I planned spontaneous trips, said yes to last-minute concerts, let him take the lead on choices I normally would have overthought. But the more I gave, the more restless he seemed. It was as if every gesture of stability on my part only reminded him of the drama he thought he was missing. There were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if what he wanted wasn't love at all, but attention, any attention, even the destructive kind. Sometimes I caught myself studying him across the room, beer bottle in hand, laughter echoing as he leaned into conversations that didn't include me. And in those moments, something heavy pressed into my chest, the sense that I was slowly being erased. I told myself love was work, that maybe all relationships had their uneven stretches. But deep down, I felt it, a crack forming, the kind you can't tape over with romantic weekends or whispered reassurances. Still, I stayed because part of me hoped the man from that first game night, the one who noticed me in the quiet, was still in there somewhere. But hope is dangerous. And looking back, I realized the truth was already clawing at the edges. Ethan didn't miss Jessica. He missed the chaos she brought. And chaos doesn't know how to love. Ethan's complaints about me being too predictable had become routine by the time Madison's rooftop birthday rolled around. I'd been trying, God. I had been trying. I'd said yes to last-minute plans, booked spontaneous day trips, even let him pick our dinner spots without me checking the reviews first. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. He thrived on chaos, and I wasn't chaos. That night, the city stretched out beneath Madison's rooftop like glitter scattered across black velvet. The music pulsed, low glasses clinked. Laughter rose and fell with the wind. Ethan grabbed his first drink within minutes, and by the time we'd been there half an hour, he was already on his third. His charm always got louder with alcohol, the kind of charisma that was less about warmth and more about spectacle. I hung back smiling politely at introductions offering to help with food trays. Ethan, meanwhile, was basking under the string lights, retelling the same story for the third time because people laughed louder each round. When he finally gestured to me, it wasn't with affection. "This is Audrey," he announced to the circle around him. He draped his arm lazily over my shoulder, his words slightly slurred. "The reliable one. She makes sure I pay my bills on time and drink water before bed." Everyone chuckled. I smiled thinly, heat crawling up my neck. He wasn't done. "She's not going to throw me off a balcony like Jessica once threatened." "Upgrade, right?" The group erupted. I stood still, my lips pressed together. Their laughter stung more than his words. I told myself to breathe, to let it slide. But the night wasn't done testing me. Later, when we were sitting on low couches near the heaters, Ethan pulled out his phone. "Look at this place," he said, showing his friends glossy photos of a luxury apartment downtown. "I'm thinking of signing the lease." I frowned. "You're signing it?" He grinned like this was some romantic surprise. "Well, we'll both be on the lease." Obviously, it was the first I'd heard of it. I kept my voice low. "Ethan, we haven't even talked about this. That's a 12-month lease. Downtown rent isn't cheap." He rolled his eyes and turned his head deliberately toward his friends. "Here we go." I'm not trying to argue," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I'm saying we should talk privately." But Ethan smirked, leaned back, and with his voice loud enough for the circle to hear, said, "This is what I mean. She can't make a decision unless it's in a spreadsheet." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the group. I sank back, cheeks burning, and then he snapped. "You're not a real woman, Audrey." His words sliced through the chatter like glass breaking. His eyes narrowed, cruel, fueled by liquid courage. "Jessica would never say no to me. She just handled things. You're scared of everything." The music didn't stop. The conversations didn't freeze, but the air around us did. A couple of his friends glanced away. One muttered something about getting another drink. I stared at him, and the man who once said I made him feel safe. At the man who had cried in my arms about Jessica's cruelty. Now in front of strangers, he was holding me up against her ghost and declaring me less than. I didn't yell. I didn't throw my drink in his face like some dramatic heroine. That's what he wanted. Drama, a scene, something to feed off. Instead, I stood quietly. I finished the last sip of my wine, set the glass gently on the table, and adjusted the strap of my purse. I didn't look at him, didn't look at anyone. I simply walked out. The music followed me to the elevator, muffled by distance, until the doors closed, and silence wrapped around me like armor. That was the last time I saw Ethan, at least for a while. When I left that rooftop party, I didn't just leave Ethan standing there with his smirk and his glass raised, halfway to his lips. I left the entire version of myself that tolerated him. The next morning, I packed my belongings into boxes. It was astonishing how little of our apartment was actually ours. Most of the furniture had been mine to begin with. The books, the kitchenware, the small plants lined up on the windowsill, mine too. Ethan's contribution was the TV, a pair of sneakers left in the hallway, and the heavy air of his presence. By the time he came home from work that day, I was gone. The key sat on the counter, no note beneath it. I blocked his number before he could call. Social media gone, payment apps gone. Every crack he could use to wedge himself back into my life, I sealed. The silence that followed was louder than any fight we'd ever had. At first, Ethan treated it like a joke. Texts from unknown numbers started popping up. "So you're ghosting me?" "That's cute. You'll come crawling back." "It was just a party. I was drunk. Grow up." I didn't reply. 2 days later, the tone shifted. "You seriously moved out without a word. You're overreacting. We were supposed to talk things through. This is childish." "Fine. If you want to stay gone, stay gone." And still I stayed gone. By the end of the week, desperation seeped through his words. Please, Audrey, one coffee, 5 minutes. I messed up. You know I didn't mean it. You're not even going to give me a chance. I read every word but never responded. Because the truth was simple. He had already told me what he meant. You're not a real woman. Jessica would never say no to me. That wasn't drunken slur. That was honesty soaked in alcohol stripped of filters. And I believed him. The outside pressure began soon after. His best friend texted me. He's been crying for days. No one deserves to be ignored like this. Then a mutual friend messaged me on Instagram. At least hear him out. You don't have to forgive him. They meant well, but they hadn't been there. They hadn't felt the sting of public humiliation. The way he twisted my loyalty into ridicule. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I just deleted their messages and removed them from my life too. It was cleaner that way. That weekend, I found myself at a small cafe with Lena, a coworker I'd only ever shared polite office chatter with. When she noticed the dark circles under my eyes, she asked if I was all right. The question broke something in me, though I didn't cry. Instead, I admitted flatly I moved out of my apartment. I don't really have anywhere to stay. She didn't ask for details. She didn't pry into wounds. She just slid a key across the table and said, I have a guest room. You don't owe me anything. Just take it. I stared at her stunned. That night, I carried my boxes into her modest apartment. The walls smelled faintly of lavender, the guest bed neatly made. She set down a spare blanket at the foot and smiled. You don't owe anyone your peace, Audrey. No one had ever said that to me before. In the days that followed, Lena gave me something Ethan never did: space without punishment. We ate quiet dinners together, half laughed about work gossip, watched shows from opposite ends of the couch. Nothing more, no expectations, just peace. Meanwhile, Ethan's attempts escalated. New numbers lit up my phone almost daily. I knew it was him before I opened them. Jessica blocked me. No one else cares about me the way you do. I didn't even want that apartment. I just wanted a future with you. You ruined it. Don't you miss me? Each message was a thread he tried to tug on, but I had already cut the rope. One night he sent me a voice note. The waveform bounced across my screen, pleading silently. I didn't press play. I just deleted it. Another time he tried Venmo, sending me $1 with the note. Can we talk? I hit block again, and with every boundary I reinforced, I felt myself breathing easier. Nights stretched longer without anxiety gnawing at my chest. Mornings felt lighter without his voice echoing in my head. For the first time in years, silence felt like freedom. And the strangest part, the more Ethan spiraled in his desperation, the calmer I became. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology or hoping he'd change. I was free. Ethan was the kind of man who couldn't stand being ignored. He fed on reactions, anger, tears, pleading. Silence to hand him was starvation, and I had cut off his food supply. The messages didn't stop. If anything, they multiplied. New numbers, new accounts, all with the same desperate cadence. I know I messed up. Please, Audrey, we had something real. Don't throw it away. He wasn't who I thought he was, but you were. No one looks at me the way you did. Don't leave me with nothing. I never replied. Instead, I watched from a distance as his life began to unravel. Friends who once defended him started going quiet through whispers from mutual acquaintances. I heard about bar fights, his voice rising above the music until bouncers had to drag him out. He got into a shouting match with one of his closest friends, stormed off and didn't come back. He lost a freelance client. After missing deadlines, his excuses running dry. Then came the stories of him crying in parking lots, drinking too much, crashing his car into a pole. No one was hurt, but the accident left his hood crumpled and his pride shattered. All of this, and still he reached for me. The irony wasn't lost on me. I used to believe his chaos was passion, his intensity proof of love. But now, from a safe distance, I saw the truth. It wasn't passion, it was hunger. A gnawing need to be wanted, even if it destroyed everything around him. And without my attention to feed on, he was starving. One night, Lena walked into our office break room, holding her phone, brows furrowed. You're not going to believe this. About mamaya de kita, ripibife, she said, sliding the screen toward me. Ethan had followed her on Instagram. Not only followed, he'd scroll back a year and like two of her photos. What is he trying to do? Lena asked, shaking her head. Mark territory that isn't his. I sighed. He's spiraling. No, she said, setting the phone down. He's watching. Her words landed heavy. Ethan wasn't reaching for me anymore. He was circling the people around me, testing how close he could get before I flinched. But I didn't. If anything, his desperation only made the distance between us feel wider. For every text I deleted, every account I blocked, I grew lighter, stronger. My days were filling with things that had nothing to do with him. I started running again, a habit I'd abandoned because Ethan complained I spent too much time outside. I cooked new recipes with Lena, laughing when the smoke alarm went off. We spent quiet evenings on her couch, sometimes talking, sometimes saying nothing at all, and it was enough. Ethan had once told me my calm made him feel safe. What he really meant was that I was his net when he felt his cushion when the chaos crashed or heaved down. But I wasn't his net anymore, and without it, he was tumbling. The last shred of pity I felt for him evaporated when I heard about his latest spiral. A mutual friend sent me a screenshot of a Facebook post. Ethan and Jessica back at it again. A public fight outside a bar, shouting so loud the cops recalled. No one was arrested, but the scene was messy enough that his parents had to pick him up. Jessica blocked him the next day. The Audrey from 2 years ago would have felt vindicated, would have thought, see, he got what he deserved. But standing in Lena's kitchen that night, stirring pasta as she poured us both glasses of wine, I realized I didn't feel anything. Not joy, not revenge, not even relief, just nothing. Because Ethan's life was no longer mine. His downfall wasn't my responsibility. Silence had done its work. And though he didn't know it yet, silence would be the final nail in the coffin between us. It was a Friday night, the kind where the city outside hummed with weekend energy. But inside Lena's apartment, it was quiet. Lena had gone to visit her family, leaving me alone with her plants, her couch, and a reheated bowl of leftover curry. I was halfway through a documentary when I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't loud, just soft, hesitant. For a second I thought maybe it was a neighbor. When I opened the door, my stomach sank. Ethan. He stood on the porch under the yellow glow of the hallway light, looking nothing like the man I once fell for. His hair was unkempt, eyes bloodshot, jacket far too thin for the weather. His hands trembled slightly as he shoved them into his pockets. "Hypes," he said, voice soft, almost rehearsed. He gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I didn't move. I was just walking around. He continued glancing past me into the apartment, didn't have anywhere else to go. His voice cracked, but I knew the performance. I'd seen it before. The slump of the shoulders, the fainted vulnerability, the damsel in distress act he'd once mocked in others. He wanted me to feel sorry for him. "I don't want to fight," he said, quickly stepping half an inch closer. I miss you, Audrey." The words landed like a stone skipping over water. Once they would have broken me open. Now they barely rippled. I didn't move aside. I didn't soften. "You knew what you had," I said, my voice low, steady. "You just didn't care." For the first time, his expression cracked. He hadn't expected that. "I didn't mean what I said that night," he rushed, eyes wide. "You know I was drunk angry. You meant every word I interrupted. Because drunk you isn't different." He's just honest, he flinched. The silence between us grew heavy. "I just need 5 minutes," he whispered, his voice breaking now, for real. "Please, 5 minutes to talk. That's all I'm asking." I looked at him for a long time. The way you might study a painting you used to love, but now only see cracks in. And then I closed the door. No slam, no dramatic flourish, just a quiet click of finality. For a few seconds I heard him breathing on the other side, maybe waiting, maybe hoping the door would open again. It didn't. Eventually his footsteps faded down the hall. I sat back on the couch, curry untouched. Documentary paused, heart steady, no shaking hands, no tears, just calm. The kind of calm that comes when you realize the storm is outside and you're finally safe inside. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without dreaming of him. 2 weeks passed. After the night, Ethan appeared at Lena's door. No more knocks, no new numbers, just silence. For a while, I wondered if maybe that was it. Maybe he had finally accepted the ending. But people like Ethan don't disappear, they recalculate. When the invitation to a mutual friend's engagement party landed in my inbox, I almost deleted it. The thought of walking into a room full of familiar faces that once looked at us as a couple, filled me with unease. Lena nudged me into going. "You've already moved on," she said, setting her glass down with that quiet certainty she carried like armor. Why hide it? She was right, so I went. The venue buzzed with celebration balloons tied to chairs, champagne flutes, clinking people laughing too loudly in a room too small. I wore a simple black dress, hair pulled back, nothing extravagant. I didn't want attention. I just wanted closure, even if I didn't know it yet. For the first hour, I kept to myself, made small talk, congratulated the couple found a quiet corner on the patio where the noise dulled, and then I heard it. That laugh. My body went still before my mind caught up. I turned slowly, and there he was, Ethan. He stood by the bar, drink in hand, leaning too close to a woman I didn't recognize. Dressed like he tried too hard to look casual. His eyes flicked across the room, scanning until they landed on me. Our gazes locked. For a second, the entire room blurred, just me and him, tethered by a history I'd already cut loose. He broke away from his group and came straight toward me. "Hey," he said, a little breathless, as though running across the room with some kind of grand gesture. "Didn't think I'd see you here." I nodded once. "It's a small city." He laughed awkwardly, looked down at his shoes, then back at me. "Audrey, I want to say I'm really sorry for everything. For that night, for how I treated you." I said nothing. He took my silence as permission. Words spilled out of him in a frantic rush. "I didn't mean what I said. You know that, right? I was drunk. I was trying to impress my friends. It was stupid. You were always so calm." His voice cracked. "I was scared. It felt like you didn't care." Finally, I spoke. "I was calm because I trusted you, Ethan. Because I thought we were partners. Turns out I was alone the whole time." He blinked hard, like he hadn't expected honesties to cut sharper than any insult. "Jessica wasn't who I thought she was," he whispered. "She used me. I was so stupid." "You weren't stupid," I corrected softly. "You were selfish. You knew exactly what you were doing. You just didn't think I'd walk away." His face twisted. "I just needed to feel wanted. She made me feel that way. You didn't." I tilted my head, studied him like a stranger. "So it was my fault you compared me to her. My fault you degraded me in front of a crowd." He opened his mouth, then shut it. "No," he muttered weakly. "I didn't cheat." I almost laughed. "No, you just humiliated me publicly and chased the same woman you used to cry about." "That's not cheating. That's pathetic." Anger flashed across his face. "You think you're better than me? To now, don't you?" "No," I said calmly. "I've always been better. I just didn't realize it until you showed me who you really are." For a long moment we stood there, his eyes searching mine, waiting for a crack. A flinch, some sign that his words still had power. They didn't. "Audrey." I turned to see Lena standing at my side, her voice steady, her presence grounding. "You ready to go?" I nodded. I looked back at Ethan one final time. "I hope you figure yourself out, but I won't be part of the mess you leave behind." Then I walked out with Lena. Ethan didn't follow. Months have passed since that engagement party. Ethan's name doesn't come up anymore. Not in group chats, not in whispers from mutual friends, not even in my own thoughts. Sometimes I still see his ghost, a new social media profile with fewer followers than the last, posts that try too hard, filtered smiles, captions clawing for attention. I don't block them anymore. I don't need to. Because the truth is, some ghosts haunt you, others fade the moment you stop chasing them. Ethan faded. I didn't win anything. I didn't get revenge. I just stopped giving him power. And without that power, he's nothing more than a name I used to know. My life, though, it's become something softer, stronger. I run again long stretches through quiet streets where the air fills my lungs instead of dread. I cook with Lena new recipes that leave the counters messy and the apartment smelling like garlic and basil. We take walks on weekends, sometimes to the park, sometimes to a coffee shop Ethan used to hate because it was too quiet. Now I love it for that very reason. The silence that once felt empty has become full. full of mornings where I don't check my phone in fear, full of evenings where laughter bubbles up naturally instead of being forced, full of people who don't drain me just to feed their own chaos. Lena never asks for more than I can give. She doesn't demand drama, doesn't pull me into her orbit just to watch me spin. She simply shows up with steady kindness, with warmth that doesn't scorch. Whether our bond turns into love or stays a rare friendship, I don't know yet. But I know this. It's healthy, it's real, and it's mine. Ethan once sneered, "You're not a real woman." I think about that sometimes. The cruelty of it, the way he wielded those words like a weapon in front of strangers. But now I see it for what it was: projection. He needed me to be small so he could feel big. But silence showed him something else. It showed him that I didn't need to shout to have the last word. I didn't need revenge or grand gestures. The worst punishment for someone like Ethan wasn't anger. It wasn't begging. It wasn't even closure. It was indifference. And I had more than enough of that to give. So when I wake in those mornings now, sunlight spilling across fresh sheets, I don't think about Ethan anymore. I don't think about Jessica or the rooftop party or the countless messages left unread. I think about coffee warming in my hands, about the quiet hum of a day waiting to unfold, about the woman I became the moment I chose myself over his chaos. And that silence, it says,